I'd like to start off by sharing a story or telling us all about reality. And that's that all of us in this room, we have something in common. We all share a gift that majority of people on the planet can only dream of. And no, it's not 5% beer. The gift is freedom. Freedom to govern our own lives, elect our government, and ultimately shape our future. However, our rights and freedoms are under threat, and there's a couple reasons for this: anti-terror legislation and political apathy. Since 9/11, the world has been immersed in fear. You can't go online, you can't turn on the news without hearing the terrifying revelations, whether it be about ISIS, Ebola, the Kardashians. But anyways, in response to this fear of terrorism, governments around the world have been responding by passing anti-terror laws. Indeed, Canada has done the same, and after the 9/11 attacks, passed anti-terror legislation. Now, 14 years on, new anti-terror legislation is up for debate. You may have heard for it. It's called Bill C-51. It's the new Anti-Terrorism Act being passed in Parliament as we speak. Now, the first thing to note about this piece of legislation is that it isn't primarily anti-terror legislation, as it targets any behavior that may undermine or may be perceived to be a threat to Canada's security. Now, Canada's security means a whole range of things. It includes critical infrastructure, financial and economic stability. Now, Bill C-51 is an omnibus bill. What that means is that it provisions several things. However, we're going to talk about three today. First, it enacts the Security of Canada Information Sharing Act, which allows all government agencies to collect and share whatever information they hold on Canadians, even if those Canadians haven't been convicted of a crime. Already it was released by Edward Snowden in 2012 that under Project Levitation, the Communications Security Establishment of Canada has been uploading and downloading 15 million records of uploads and downloads every day from Canadians. Second, it amends the criminal code. And it does this by lowering the threshold of preventive detention from will commit a crime to may commit a crime. What this means is that law enforcement can arrest and detain someone for up to 7 days without right to due process and without that person ever committing an actual crime. Third, it expands the power and scope of CSIS, Canada's Security Intelligence Service. Originally in the 1980s, CSIS was established just to collect intelligence. However, with this new bill, it will have the power to physically disrupt any perceived threat to Canada's security. Physically disrupt could mean anything. Take down a website, go into somebody's home, break up a protest deemed unlawful. And also what's important to note is that in 2012, the Office for Inspector General over CSIS was shut down, making Canada the only Western democracy in the world without a high-level body of elected officials providing oversight. Now, what is really interesting about this legislation and really terrifying about this legislation is that it could be used to target First Nations, individuals trying to protect their homes from exploitation and abuse. It could be used to target environmentalists, protecting the environment from the dangers of tar sands and pipelines. And it could be used to target political dissent, individuals or groups calling for a different foreign policy, or even just arguing to bring the troops home. Now, is this legislation really necessary? Well, let's look at the facts on terrorism. Since 9/11, Canada has indeed suffered 2 terror attacks. However, there have been numerous terror attempts that have been thwarted through lawful policing. The most recent example of this was on the 12th of this month, when Toronto police stopped a terror attack without the use of mass surveillance. The second fact on terrorism is that you are more likely to die from being struck by lightning, from a piano falling on your head, or from you tripping over your cat. The last fact on terrorism, and I'd argue the most important fact on terrorism, is that there are ways to reduce its threats without sacrificing our Charter on rights and freedoms. However, the other threat to our rights and freedoms is political apathy. Living in a democracy, we're granted lots of rights, but we're also granted responsibilities. And our paramount responsibility as individuals is responsibility over our own lives. So when we don't raise our voices about the issues that matter, when we don't vote, we tacitly hand over our right to self-governance. As Martin Luther King Jr. once said, our lives end the day we begin to become silent about the things that matter. So how do we make sure our rights are protected? How do we make sure our freedoms are safe? Well, I'd argue the best way to assure this is to become a politically engaged public. How do we become a politically engaged public? I believe there are two avenues to accomplish this. First, we reform education and apply technology to politics. Now, I went to high school in North Vancouver and I loved it. Honestly, I really did. The teachers were helpful, the students were friendly. My mom would often tell me, oh, one day you could become a lawyer. And I remember telling my mom, probably not. But I really did enjoy my experience in high school. But it was only after I graduated that I realized there was so much I didn't know. I knew nothing about our charter and rights and freedoms. I didn't even know all the law, why we had the laws we had, how our polity functions. I didn't even know how to register to vote, let alone to vote. The only thing I knew about a political party was that it wasn't a house party, which at the time was rather upsetting. From kindergarten up until grade 12, students spend roughly 13,000 hours in school. 13,000 hours. And we learn very good things. You learn your math, your social studies, your sciences, my personal favorite, PE. And in that time, I really do believe there's some additional hours we could allocate to learning some other lessons. I believe we should be taught to memorize our Charter on Rights and Freedoms. I believe we should know not just what laws we have, but how we can change the laws. Not just how our polity functions, but how we can reform our polity. We should be taught that to live in an efficient democracy, what you need is a politically engaged public that knows it has the means to establish change. Now, no, I'm not advocating we all watch Parliament sessions. If we ran out of entertainment, maybe so. What I'm arguing is 100 hours out of 13,000 to learn these important lessons isn't a lot to ask. However, it's going to take more than just reforming education. I believe we could also apply technology to politics. It would be easy and it would come with huge benefits. I know all of you have noticed, but the society we live in today is immersed in technology. You can't go onto a bus without seeing heads in phones. You can't go into a classroom without seeing laptops and tablets. And I can't get around to making dinner until I've finished playing FIFA. It's true. So applying technology to politics would be very important, and it would come with huge benefits. First, we could start with the voting system. We could set up an online website where you could both register to vote and vote. So if you don't make it out to vote one day, either you're busy or you're too lazy, you can do it right at home on your laptop, or you can do it wherever you are on your smartphone. Second, we could utilize applications like Twitter and Facebook to set up polls. So when there's important laws up for debate, we can vote whether we'd vote yes or no, if we don't care, and then we could say why we feel that way. And instead of our government spying on us, we should be able to know what our government is up to. And we could utilize apps similar to Snapchat, so that our representatives show us that they're in Parliament, doing their job, and most importantly, representing their constituents. And last, what I'd argue is we could adopt a system similar to what the University of British Columbia has. However, instead of rate my professor, we could have rate my representative. So we know, well, the representatives know when they're doing a good job, and they know when they need to improve. I believe the potential of a politically engaged public would be limitless. I know for certain that our rights would be safe, because we would never sacrifice them no matter the circumstance, because to do so would be to relinquish our rights to self-governance. I believe we could go further than that, though. I believe finally a politically engaged public would get government to stop focusing on those politically scary things, politically sexy things, and begin focusing on those silly, more preventable stuff that kills people all too often. Instead of investing in smart weapons, let's invest in smart fruit. And let's end a war on terror and start a war on poverty and actually focus on the issues that really affect us and really matter. Now, what happens if we don't manage to apply technology? And what happens if we don't manage to reform education? Well, I'd like to talk for myself for a second. I didn't get involved in politics because I was concerned. I got involved in politics because I realized, like we all do, have the power to change. I ran in the provincial election at the age of 18 as the youngest candidate in the province. I was doing things I never could have dreamed of, having intelligent discussions from members from my community, participating in a debate where the second youngest candidate was twice my age, participating in interviews for newspaper and radio. Now, I didn't win, but that doesn't matter because I did beat the Communist Party. No, but sincerely, my primary intention was not to win. My primary intention was to inform. My primary intention was to raise awareness, to light a fire in the hearts and minds of whoever I could to realize that this is a battle worth fighting for. If there's one thing I want you all to leave from today, it's this. The real problem with the intrusion of our rights and freedoms is that it robs us of the power to say no. The power of the serf to say no to the Lord. The power of the slave to say no to the slaveholder. The power of us to say no to the bureaucrats. That is when you establish freedom. For right now, we're on a collision course with the unknown. Our potential has never been greater, and the stakes have never been higher. But the thing is, when we leave this world, the only thing we leave behind is the impact we leave on others. The rights we have today are not just ours. They're our children's and our grandchildren's, and they are counting on us to get this right, and we cannot let them down. Let us not just fight for ourselves. Let us fight for those who fought for us. And let us fight for those who will inherit this world after we are gone.